Okay, so I'm wearing a GoPro camera. I'm not sure what you can see here, but I hope you can get a good view of things. This is a Pinus sylvestris, Scots pine, that I've been growing for, well, it's about 20 years old. I've been training it for about 10 years now, and it's got to the point each year where it really is pretty healthy and thick and dense, and it's time to start sort of thinning it quite considerably each winter as well. So earlier in the year I gave it the spring prune, and with the new emerging candles I pinched back to a couple of inches, and I was a bit lazy and didn't really thin it much at all then. So now I've got to start getting rid of some of the excess growth, lightening it up so that for the spring next year it's nice and light and lots of air gets in. So first thing I do is take off all the dangly stuff and all the low-lying needles that are kind of sprouting out the bottom. That's kind of a given, which you don't really need to think about so much. Tend to start looking at the older needles as well. You'll see there's kind of 3 different generations of needles. There's the brown ones that have finished and are falling off, then there's the dark green ones which are last year's, and then there's the grayer ones at the tips which are this year's. So the idea really is to keep this year's needles, get rid of 2-year-old brown needles, and then pull off the green needles from last year that are kind of in the way or are sprouting in the wrong direction, just making the whole thing look shaggy. We're after quite a thinned look, so quite a lot of the stuff's got to come out. There's branches like this one in here, take that one down to there, something like that. It's quite a thick one, we'll leave that on, take that one off there, and basically wherever I'm given a choice I would take out the biggest one at each choice and just leave the freshest, smallest one, which is a bit like, you know, a lot of pruning. It's a bit like fruit tree pruning or something, where in fact all you need to do is remove the older wood each time and allow the younger, fresher wood to stay on. And because I haven't done this heavily for a few years, I've been a bit lazy and just allowed it to grow. There's actually quite a lot that can come off of here, so I wouldn't recommend you always take this much off, but it's perfectly okay for the tree to do it every so often. Certainly in Japan they really prune these trees quite heavily, and that's kind of part of the look in Japan. So basically all the straggling stuff, all the stuff that's going down is coming off, all the stuff that's particularly overgrown is coming off. When I get a good branch, I can decide which ones to keep, which ones to lose. So typically you kind of start off with a fork and then that divides, and then you take off another one as well, and by the end sometimes you only actually want one branch in each location. You can afford to really take it quite hard at this point. So here I'm taking off really quite a bit. And of course the middle at the top no one ever actually sees, so although you might think you made a big hole in the top, it doesn't really matter. And sometimes a big hole in the top is quite useful because it lets light in where you need it. Another thing is they quite soon get bigger than you think, and although you've been kind of attached to the tree and so pleased that it's improving, it's often sometimes for the best to actually take out a lot more than you think, because all of a sudden it's kind of sprung up on you. Now here you see I was training that branch down because there was always a gap around this side, so the training's been done its job there. So taken out, I'd say about half of that, and it doesn't look overly thin from where I am. It's only when you compare how much has come out that you think it's too light. And then rather than finishing that side off, run the other side, I'm just going to keep working in one position up a ladder. So again, the dangly stuff comes off. Don't know what the technical term is for dangly stuff, but dangly will do me. Not necessarily trying to make the tree much bigger, in fact in places trying to make it a bit trimmer, because what we don't want is too much light cast on the shade, sorry, cast on the branches below. So as these trees get better and better, every so often it's quite good to go back in and be quite strict with it. Start off on the outside, taking off these big branches, give it a good whack. It's the best way to get the loose needles off, and then if you're from above you get quite a good view of what's going on, and you get to see the structure of each branch quite well. And there's no need to have more than one or maybe two of each of these guys here. So that's quite a thick one there. We might take that out completely. Take that one out. And you get a little collection of 3 branches looking like that. You can either take, well, there's 4 in fact. If you take out that one, you can take out any number of those. So you could take out, I'm going to take this one out, and that one out, and that one out, and leave 2 slightly better spaced ones, which are kind of trained downwards. In fact, this one I'm going to take back to there. There's a little bud to vary that a bit. This one's a bit too woody and thick. So it's really just a matter of getting rid of the overgrown woody stuff, which, like I said, is just like you know, a lot of fruit tree pruning. It's nothing more complicated than that sometimes. Although we like to think it's more complicated than that, the principle is pretty much the same. It's about letting light in, and you know, it's nice to sort of think that you're building up this really dense structure and framework of branches, but in fact for pine trees that's not really what you want. And well, depending on the look you're after, but if you look in Japanese gardens in the winter, their pines are really heavily thinned, often with very little foliage on at all. Of course it varies in different parts of the country, and different gardens, the style of tree, style of garden they're working on, what they're trying to achieve. In Tokyo they tend to leave a bit more foliage on because they have the strong winds on the Kanto plain, which come through in the winter, and if the trees were lighter, if they had more space in them, the wind would just run straight through and rip the remaining needles off. So they tend to be a bit bushier in Tokyo. Sorry, in Kyoto, it's, you know, the classic Kyoto look is really thin and really well pruned. But even in Kyoto, you see some trees which look very different to that. So again, just looking up there, you can see the difference between what I've done and what I haven't done. This is a fairly typical autumn pruning job on a pine, Midori Sumi. It's one of my favourite jobs there is. It takes a lot of time. You can rush it, but there's no point. You just have to go bit by bit, slowly and steadily, taking out the biggest stuff. And you're meant to be working systematically, but I find I often get sidetracked and get lost and end up chasing some little idea that isn't really what I should be focusing on. And you know, that doesn't matter too much. The main point is to enjoy what you're doing and to sort of get some kind of coherence to what you're doing, so that, you know, each cut is basically doing the same thing as the last cuts. If you look at this back bit, it's got really chunky and overgrown here, so it'd be nice to sort some of that out. Take quite a lot of that out. In fact, I might take the whole thing off back in here. Pine is quite a soft wood at this time of year, so the snips should be able to do that. Ideally I'd use a pair of pruners. It feels like you're taking a lot off, but from the outside you're not going to notice that, and what it does is let more light in here to get other stuff regenerating well. And it's all to do with light on pine trees, because they're so light hungry, or light dependent, whatever way you call it, that without the light they just never re-sprout from further in. And if they don't re-sprout from further in, you just get a big bald bare patch in the middle, sort of thatch basically of old dead needles, and you never get well, you lose the shape too quickly, and then if you do need to cut back in again, it's dead and you don't get any regrowth. So this way, although it looks like I'm taking a lot out, I'm actually sort of allowing for next year's regeneration right from the inside. So little buds like this, and buds that we haven't even seen emerge yet will break from all of these points and keep the whole thing going. So it's kind of you have to take away a certain amount, really, just, you know, to allow next year's to regrow again. There we go, coming on nicely. I might just take that one off as well, a little bit dangly. And you see I'm not trimming the needles at the top. Some parts of Japan they'd actually get clippers now and would trim the needles just to make it look tidier. I don't really go for that. I think it makes it look tidier, but we're not necessarily after a tidy pine. You know, I'm after a sort of natural, airy looking pine rather than the really tight, solid clip pine. And anyway, clipping the needles, they scorch, the tips scorch and they dry out, and they do look like they've been clipped, and it's just It's not cheating, because, you know, there's no rules and you can do what you want, but I don't think it's always the right thing to do, even though it gets you a better finish sometimes short term. So I would avoid clipping. I wouldn't use secateurs for this kind of job. You see what I'm using, these little bud snips, Mekiri Basami bud pruning scissors is what the Japanese call them. We just call them snips or pro snips, and these are a pair of Tobisho snips. I've taken the vinyl handles off. In fact, they never came with vinyl handles, but we sell them at Niwaki with the red and yellow Tobisho colours on, which is quite nice. So in here again, if you go back to the beginning again, you can see years ago I kind of made this structure and this framework by chopping out leaders in here, little side branches, so we've got this kind of shape emerging. And you know, the rough shape and the form is kind of fixed now, and I just have, actually what I decided a long time ago was to define these ones. So I've got a little branch here, and I've got a branch here, and I've got a branch here. I felt the whole thing was getting a bit big and heavy, so I chopped out a lot of it. Which is the nice thing of having your own trees. You can make big decisions like that without having to check with anyone, check with the boss. So trying to keep a little definition between this one and this one. And look at that, you see all these new little buds coming off of there. They're just what we want, is the new stuff, because the needles are lighter and fresher. The growth is more compact and sort of inside the tree rather than sticking out dead old woody stuff. So there's a lot of this can be thinned, and look, they've all got new buds breaking from the bottom, so that's good. Keep the light coming in and the buds will keep growing out. Yeah. You know, and I'm rabbiting away at you now, but in Japan there'd be almost complete silence. There might be this was in a garden, temple garden or something, there'd be a bunch of guys on each tree. Actually a tree this size, probably only one person, but the bigger trees there'd be 2 or 3 guys in sometimes, and they just work in silence. There wouldn't be much chat going on. It would just be nice and relaxed, and all you'd hear is this lovely snipping noise, and the odd sound of stuff falling through the tree. You know, and often if you're just a visitor in Japan, if you're walking around temples in the autumn, in sort of October or November, first sign you get of anyone in the trees is a sort of rustling noise above you, and you look up and you realise there's a guy up there 20-30 feet up sometimes who's busy pruning. And I guess the autumn's my favourite time to visit Japan because of that, the action going on in the gardens. It's guaranteed, you always get something. Earlier in the year it's a bit more hit and miss when they're going to see pruning, but October, November, December you're very unlucky if you don't get some action each day you go out into the garden, really. Normally something happening. You see even in here we've got some little congestion going on. Basically it's about just not getting it too developed and chunky and woody, and keeping it nicely thinned, keeping it back to one. Sometimes you even take out a small one in favour of a big one because it's better spaced. You know, it doesn't always work exactly how you want it. You don't always get to keep the smallest and freshest. Sometimes you've got to keep a big one, and sometimes it looks a bit of a mess, and you look at it now and you think, oh Christ, what have I done? But if you step back and look at the whole thing again, certainly from back here, it suddenly looks quite respectable to me. And you've got to remember that these trees, you know, this is a 12-foot high, 10-foot high tree, and no one's going to look at it from quite the view that you're looking at it when you're pruning it. So sometimes I guess it's worth taking a step back down the ladder, walking back out without tripping over, and having a look there. So I've done, you know, I've just done 3 branches in the last quarter of an hour, and you can see how it's coming on right. Yeah. And I guess, you know, you always want to have in the back of your mind what style and shape you're after, and it needn't necessarily be a recognised style, but you know, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve solid flat shapes, or are you going for a more natural kind of rippling flowing effect where each branch kind of leads into the next one? You might call that a more sort of natural style as opposed to a more sculptural defined style. It doesn't really matter what style you're after, but you've got to know for yourself what you're trying to achieve, or else it can get a little bit vague, this kind of pruning, because you just kind of keep on going without really knowing what the point is. And in Japan they very rarely get down, it's an earwig, they very rarely climb down off the tree to have a look. I mean, you know, young guys might step down to have a look, or they might get cooled down by the boss just to go over some of the points that they're not getting quite right when they're still at the sort of apprentice level. But you know, if you just climbed up 30 foot up a tree, you don't want to have to climb up and down every 5 minutes to check something. So it tends to be kind of process pruning they're doing more than an aesthetic pruning. They're kind of doing it because that's what they've got to do, and they kind of, the process defines the aesthetic, if that makes sense. So they're slightly, I think, less concerned about how each cut looks, but they're more concerned about the fact that each cut has to happen, and the resulting look is how it looks, which makes perfect sense to me. It probably makes no sense to you at all. So I call that kind of process pruning, which again is going back to like orchard work and fruit tree work. It's not the aesthetic, it's the yield you're after, and you're trying to get the tree growing happily. So imagine this was for a yield, and the resulting look is the sort of byproduct of that, rather than the other way around. So there we go, that one done. And you always start from the top in this situation, for obvious reason that you make a mess on each branch as you go further down, so all the needles have ended up on this one from up there. So to save yourself faffing about going backwards and forwards, always try and start from the top. The temptation, of course, is to start from the bottom, where it's easy to start from and you get a better look. But funny enough, another thing I've learnt myself is that you tend to start off a little bit more cautiously till you've got your eye in, so to speak, and then by the end you're kind of you think you know what you're up to. You think you're on fire and you're plugging away, and of course by that time you've normally got to the bottom of the tree, and the bottom of the tree, in fact, you tend to want to prune more lightly than the top of the tree, because the growth is less vigorous at the bottom, and you need to preserve some of that growth to sort of keep the general balance right. So the trick is to try and cool yourself down and calm down, not get faster and faster and heavier and more confident, but to just try and sort of restrain yourself, and then know that as you work down, just slack off a little bit on how tight you're pruning. I normally get that wrong each year and think, damn, I know it, but I still get it wrong. So hey, it doesn't really matter. So, and again, you could take out a lot more than I'm taking out if you wanted to. It would just